All right, welcome back to the Confidence Formula. We are jumping into week 8 and talking about the inside man. I actually changed my title slide here to ask you a question, which is how is your sense of concrete confidence at this point? I'm curious. I might ask you this when we're on the court this week. Like, what is your sense of your increased confidence since we started? Like, are all these pieces that I try to fit together in my head making sense to you and stacking up to give you that sense of concreteness to what we're doing and how you can apply it when you're actually in a game? So the inside man's really another one of my favorite weeks. I might say that every week going forward because we're really getting into the more exciting second level, third level of some of the basic concepts we've been talking about. So this is a new addition to our version 2.0 that we didn't have in the first version, and we're really packing a lot in this week. So the inside man is really everything I want you to know about how to play if you're the big man, whether you actually are big or not, knowing how to operate when you're inside. And if you're a guard that's trying to utilize a big man, how to pass to them, how to get them to be moving in a way that's not in your way, and to make them really a big asset to your team. Where a lot of big guys and a lot of coaches of big guys kind of stick them near the basket. They're kind of in the way and they don't really have a role. They're kind of a big person supposed to clean up rebounds and put back layups, but they're not really a part of the offense. It's like when we run our offense and then we miss, the big guy gets to clean up the mess at the end. And so my goal is to make you, if you are a big guy, really useful around the basket all the time and actually get touches and make plays. And then if you're a guard, again, just knowing how to help your big man be more useful by getting them moving and how to get them the ball more often. So we're going to start with rebounding, which my recent alliteration that I'm really proud of is renegade rebounding with 2 R's. If you know me for a while now, we're going into week 8. I really like alliteration where all the words in the sentence start with the same letter, and it just makes me happy when I find one that really works and has lots of meaning to it. So renegade rebounding, I really have arrived at over a lot of time of studying Dennis Rodman and his approach to rebounding. If you're not familiar with him, look him up. He's a legend that really got more rebounds than scored points in a lot of his games and even over his whole career. Was just a specialist in playing that role and being a great rebounder. And the 3 words, again, my alliteration, 3 words that start with P that I've arrived at that are the important pieces of rebounding. One is prediction, getting good at knowing where the balls are going to be earlier than anybody else and more accurately than anybody else gives you a natural advantage. You're going to have an instinctual understanding of where to be and where the ball's going to be. Position is the second part. If you know where the ball's going to go, then you can adjust your position accordingly and have a head start to go get it. And then the third one is what most players and what most coaches leave out of this equation is pursuing the ball. We talked about going way back to week 2 with our defense stuff. Go get the ball as the ultimate objective of rebounding. So we talked about boxing out as kind of holding the other player back. We want to go after it with pursuit. So if we predict where it's going, we position ourselves in an advantage position, and we go after it and pursue it, we're going to end up with a lot of rebounds. So this week, where we had previously worked on the defensive side of rebounding for the most part, we're going to talk about the offensive side. So when your teammate misses, these are the tools I like to use to get better at getting the ball and being able to score after getting the ball. So the first one's going to be tipping the ball, which for most players is kind of a new idea. Maybe you've done a tip drill with coaches, guiding you, but it's like tip, 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 repetition. What we're trying to do is tip it somewhere useful one time and accurately so that we can go get the ball. So we're going to work on tipping it to ourselves, which can be very useful. What's something Dennis Rodman did really well is tip it out of a crowd to somewhere you can go get it easier by yourself. Tipping it out to a teammate, which has become more popularized and more frequently used at the higher levels of play. You got a big guy near the basket, can't really get a grip on with two hands or score it back in. He's smacking it back out to a 3-point shooter, and you can reset the possession or get a shot. And then third one is actually what most coaches focus on, is tipping it back in the basket. So whether that's one hand or two-handed, if you can get control of it enough in the air and put it back up without having to come back down and collect yourself, you have a natural advantage to score. And then the third one here is pin and pivot. So as an offensive rebounder, usually on the outside of the defense, who's between you and the basket. So when a shot goes up, they have a natural advantage of position to start with. And so pin and pivot is something Dennis Rodman did very well, of actually pushing the defender under the basket and then pivoting so that you're facing away from the basket, but the ball's bouncing off towards your open arms, and your opponent is basically under the backboard and the rim where they don't have a chance to get the ball. And then finally, the offensive rebounding, we're going to work on a version of the swim cut, like we just practiced in week 7 on the perimeter, is a basket cut to the basket. We're going to use that same swim technique to get through a defender that's trying to box us out. And then we're also going to use a spin move version where, they're stepping in our way to box us out, and we're spinning off of them to get to open space. And again, that all comes from being able to predict where the ball's going effectively, so that our spin move is actually taking us to the correct space where the ball is likely to fall. So let's see each of these on video so you get a better idea of what you're in for. I have 2 coaches demonstrating here. These guys did a great job of executing exactly what this should look like. So watch closely. First one is going to be a tip. Coach Kelly here is just smacking it back out to the shooter, and shooter's able to catch and shoot it and drop it in. Missed on purpose the first time, made it on the second time. Pretty impressed. Second one is tipping it to self. So we're often tipping it out of the middle of where the crowd is, tipping it toward the short corner baseline where we can catch it and collect it. And then the third one is tipping it in the basket, going up to meet it in the air, put it back in without coming down to having to collect. The pin and pivot here is on the outside. The offensive player is pinning the defense under the basket and rotating so that they can get outside. Spin move is just predicting again, using that boxed out position of the defense against them, spinning off of their position to get open. And then the swim move is really cutting over their inside shoulder, trying to get a step on them and swim our arms and shoulders through them. Same techniques can work in a free throw rebound situation. Simple box out can work here because we're in close proximity. We can swim or spin move off of that. And then when we're boxing out the shooter, something I like to work on is how our feet are moving to get there. So taking a running stride, kind of like our X step, run, turn, and sit, and get in front of the shooter as soon as possible. All useful tools, most of which nobody ever talks about or works on specifically enough to get you repetition and good at it and certainty of what you should be doing in each of those. So we're going to spend a little time on that this week, probably on both nights that we're on the court, give you a chance to break it down, get comfortable with it, and then, of course, play out of it with some live defense going against you. Next is the dunker. They put at the top of the list, be sneaky. So most times when you're the big man near the basket, all your advice is like, be big, be strong, push your way in, gain your position, hold your position. It's like, it's all fighting, against resistance we expect to have. And so this is a completely different philosophy, which is be sneaky. So we're actually going to hide you behind the backboard, just outside the paint, where no defender is going to want to go with you and stand next to you. And therefore, you're behind their back most of the time. You're out of sight and out of mind, and you're able to be sneaky. And then we're exploiting defensive instincts. So this is a position that's activated by a drive. We're going to contrast that with what we're going to talk about next as the playmaker, which is more to do with cutting and passing. So when a drive happens, very much like our circle in drive and kick, if we're going around the 3-point line, when a teammate drives right, we move right. Same rule applies here. Our circle's just smaller. So we're going the width and size of the paint to about the free throw circle. So not up to the free throw line and not outside the paint into the short corner, we're going size of the paint below the free throw circle. So small circle, but the same rule applies. Teammate drives right, we're going to move to our right, circling around and underneath the basket in some cases, which we'll see on video in a minute. Exploiting defense instincts just means that when a drive happens and your defender gets tunnel vision that I got to stop the ball, you're moving behind their back when they look away, and then they have a lot of trouble finding you again. So we're kind of moving with really precise timing in a very small space. So we're popping out into a pocket of space where we can catch and score when our teammate needs to dish the ball off to us. And the defense is losing track of us and having a really hard time recovering. We're also going to work on, as the guard position, passing to the dunker. Can we throw a lob? Can we throw a bounce pass? Can we throw a behind the back bounce pass? All the different tools we can use to try to get the ball to the right pocket of space where that dunker is going to be moving so that they can catch and score really quickly, again, before the defense can recover. And then finally, we're going to talk about brace for impact, which just means as you catch it in the dunker, because you beat that defender and exploited their instincts, they're out of position, they're recovering back, like panicked that you got away from them, they're going to foul you a lot. And so doing some footwork and just shoulder positioning techniques to like be ready that they're going to come foul you and be able to score anyway, and ultimately get an and one if possible. So let's see what this looks like. The dunker position is outside the paint below the backboard again, circling up to inside the free throw circle. And this one can often be a floater or catching and shooting quickly before the defense recovers. And we can also go counter moves, step through up and under style, which we're going to talk about more from a different setup in a minute. Getting that timing of circle and that catch and shot, getting it off quickly before the defense recovers is really the name of the game. The other direction drive pushes us the other way, underneath the backboard to the other side. And here's where we end up getting clobbered with a lot of fouls because we're really close to that defender that got out of position to stop the ball. And so being able to collect and brace for impact off of 2 feet, collecting with 2 hands, just having ball security as we're going up to shoot it becomes a really important factor. All right, the playmaker, the more fun stuff. This is a term, actually, both of these terms, I should give credit to my mentor I mentioned before, Noah LaRoche, who really taught me both of these concepts and simplified greatly how I teach just what a big guy should do around the basket. So the playmaker is really modeled after the Nikola Jokic approach, which is to be an incredible passer out of the post with your back to the basket, to the point where all the defense is worried about your teammates that are going to cut and move and get open shots, and they end up leaving you into ISO one-on-one where you can actually score easier. Where most players' whole approach, and comes from coaching most part, most players' approach is, if I catch in the post, I've got to go bang, overpower 2 or 3 people and just dominate and score, when the whole time there was 2 or 3 wide open teammates that we could have been kicking out and passing to. So our whole approach is be a passer first. And what I've really arrived at, the reason why this is so effective, is what I call the angle advantage, which means that all the perimeter teammates all have a perimeter defender. And when you catch the ball in the post, all 4 of those defenders have their back turned to you. And so you have an instant advantage of angle, and your teammates, especially when they're going to cut, have an advantage of angle because the ball is behind the defender's back. They're going to turn around to see where the ball is, and it's a major distraction. And so anything we can do to have teammates moving when that natural instinct kicks in that they're going to turn and look at the ball, we call it cut the blind man, which is timing your cut as a perimeter player when your defender's head turns to look at the post where the ball went. Like, they can hardly resist. Like, they're going to look. If you wait long enough, it will happen. When their head turns, you cut behind their head, and suddenly you've created, similar to the dunker we talked about, you're exploiting their instinct, and now they have panic mode, right? They lost you, you're 2 steps ahead of them, they're trying to catch up, or help has to come. Like, it just causes massive problems for the defense. As simple as that sounds, if we can get the positioning and the angle and the timing to work, like all kinds of stuff opens up for that. We end up getting wide open layups or wide open kick out 3-point shots because the defense is so caught off guard by a simple cut when the head turns. And because the instinct is so fundamental to just human psychology that when the ball is passed behind your back, you turn and look where the ball went. It's nearly always there as an opportunity to cut and find advantages, which is why I really like working on this position. No matter what size you are, if you can get comfortable catching the ball down near the block with your back to the basket, and you can get your team on board with moving as soon as that happens, you can just have a lot of fun. And so that's what we're going to move toward, is playing some 3-on-3 out of this and really getting creative with all the different ways we can cut and create openings. And the kind of second layer to this is what's called a split cut, which is kind of touching on a concept we're going to work on in the following couple weeks, which is screening away from the ball. So this just means after we pass to the post, we're going to go screen a guard, and then we both cut off of that screen and move to opposite spaces and all that. So we'll walk through some of that as kind of an intro and just a way to show you more creative options when we're using the post. And then what I started out saying was, when you're a really good passer and you have all this movement around you, you're massively distracting the defense from you, even though you have the ball. And so if you watch Nikola Jokic, what he ends up doing a lot is looking at all the passes, making a lot of assists, and then, second quarter of the game, he's faking passes and he just goes and scores and nobody's ready for him. And so that's kind of the approach I look at. Instead of trying to, again, pound the ball inside and score as a first option, we look at passes first, and when it's open, we exploit it and go score. So we're going to work through really 4 core moves. They all start from a similar setup. We're going to work on outside, inside footwork when we catch. So it's different based on which side of the paint you're on. Outside, inside means your inside foot is free to attack, to pivot and face up. Like, we can do a lot of different things with it. The basic core 4 moves that we're going to work on starts with a crab dribble, which just means you're walking sideways with your outside hand dribbling. And I'll show you each of these on a video in a second. A jump hook comes out of that crab dribble, up and over the front of the rim from the middle of the paint. Up and under is our step through pivot. Drop step is like a spin move. Shoulder roll is like counter move where I'm not dribbling, but I'm actually faking and then pivoting around the outside really quickly. If you watch Jokic closely, he'll use that a lot. It's kind of a crafty move, one of my favorites to work on and get comfortable with. So let's dive into video. We're going to see the team action first, cutting off the post, and you'll see an example of what it looks like to cut with me acting as the defense here, what the timing and the angle of the cut looks like to cut when the defensive head turns. So really, we got two angles to cut. First one is cutting middle, what we call a speed cut. Second one is cutting baseline, can also be called a speed cut. Here's where the head turns and he cuts middle. We're just working on that on both sides and working on passes. Should nearly always be a bounce pass out of the post, unless you're lobbing it to somebody that's getting above the rim. So passes in the air are the ones that get stolen. This is an example of the split cut, where we're actually passing to post and then screening away to our other guard before we get to the basket. We've got options to do both. We can just cut straight through, or we can relocate. We can cut again. Just working on all angles. Again, by getting the ball behind some of the defense, we open up a lot of possibilities. Another example of a split cut. All right, now into our individual moves. Outside, inside on our court. Fortunately for us, we get to say a Dr. Seuss rhyme. We call it red foot, blue foot. It keeps it consistent. Which foot goes when? Gets us organized so that we can attack correctly and consistently without traveling or without getting off time with our dribble. So jump hook is what you just saw. Up and under is showing the ball as if we're going to do the jump hook, and then stepping really under the defense's armpit. Why it's called up and under. Gets us a great counter move if the defense is really contesting. And then our drop step, go back and see that one again. Our drop step is like a spin move, we're going on the second dribble, crab dribble, we're dropping our outside foot away. And again, our brace for impact concept applies here. We want to get to 2-foot jump whenever possible, especially on this drop step, because we're exploiting the defense so much. They're going to be out of position and recovering back hard. They're going to nearly always foul us. Shoulder roll is the fake where we don't dribble yet. We're keeping our right foot planted and we're swinging our left foot all the way around the outside. So the reason it's called a shoulder roll is we're actually leaning our shoulders on the defense and we're spinning off of their body. So they're braced for impact, thinking we're going to run into them with our crab dribble, and instead we're faking it and rolling off of their body to get around them up to the basket. Really fun move to work on. If you get good at it, there's at least a couple of times a game where you can pull that out and find yourself pretty open to the basket. Good stuff. All right, summarizing. Go get the ball as a rebounder. We want to get good at prediction, get good at positioning, and then get good at pursuing. How to go get the ball more often. And as an offensive rebounder, we're going to work at how to tip it to yourself, to teammates in the basket, how to pin and pivot, and how to use our positioning on offense to either swim or spin off of a defender that's boxing out and kind of planting themselves in our way. We're going to be more agile as a rebounder and go get the ball more often. 2 is the dunker. We don't have to be able to dunk to play the dunker. We just want to know timing and positioning so we can pop out into open space and get open shots when the defense is doing their job by taking away a drive from a teammate. And then lastly, again, the playmaker, making plays from the post, scoring when the defense plays you or overplays you for a passer, and being a really good passer that kind of gets them thinking about all the dangers you have around you, and you're able to go score at will when you need to, and having a lot of fun learning the post and perimeter player interaction. As a perimeter player, learning how to make great cuts and get wide open layups from your postman by exploiting that defensive head turn whenever that pass goes behind their back to get to the post. So a lot of fun stuff, a lot of new stuff for most players this week, but another layer of getting good at versatility as an offensive player can be a lot of fun. So that's it for week 8. I'll see you on the court soon.